Excellent. Excellent.
Feature, man. How come you didn't sing? I know I was put pressure on you. All right. So, yeah, we had technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. Yeah. Absolutely. It's all my fault. So I got shitty connectivity out here.
Yeah, and so you are living in a perfect example of the rural broadband problem. You are living the digital divide, dude.
You know what? I think the people who are living the digital divide would probably not agree with you. They'd probably go, "Oh, look at you in that fancy, nice house with a pool and jacuzzi in the desert. I don't feel sorry for you."
But those are the people. I mean, there's a lot of those people who are part of the digital divide. They're paying like up the wazoo for connectivity, though, right?
Yeah. You know, whatever. I don't know if they're using cable modem or DSL or whatever out here, but it's horrible. And then there's, barely a bar of LTE signal way out here, out in Superstition Mountains. So it's not good. Yeah. Yeah, it's horrible.
That's amazing.
I know. It's what happens when I leave Scottsdale or Mesa, or something, and go farther out into the mountains. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm experimenting with these. I just found this really cool little feature. I didn't even know about them. There's video filters.
Yeah, that pig nose and ears is really doing it for all of our corporate customers who are listening to us right now.
Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly why I'm doing this.
They're feeling the professionalism.
Here's the worst part of it. Here's the none part. I was about to say I have no idea how to turn it off.
Right.
But how's it going, David?
It's up now, but then you do have that background from what seems to be like a concert stage, and then the arms of the fan that's on top of somebody's shoulders are shooting straight out of your ears.
Right out of your ears.
It's like like South Asian goddess thing out of your ears.
How's that look? Okay.
Excellent.
All right. Man. All right. Are we done with the week yet? We're barely at the middle.
We're barely in the middle of the week. We're on vacation. You guys are not really working. I'm not really working.
Really?
I am working. I had fun, reading. I almost posted we're recording, so let me keep it clean. But have this brand where big multinational companies that are trying to do deals with other big multinational companies should take the time to make sure that whatever this partnership is, that all business units can collaborate with all business units, and that you put that in that first agreement so that when you go to press and you say, hey, 1 + 1 = 3, and then sales goes like, oh no, I can't sell that, so that doesn't happen. And anyway, I spent all night last night in legalese just trying to induce logic into the law.
Wow,
marketing gone wild.
That is marketing. You said two marketing things there. You said 1 + 1 = 3, and then you said induce. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, induce.
Wow.
So like vomiting. That's a word that's associated with vomiting. Right?
Yeah. So, folks, today we're talking about IoT in the oil and gas space, part 2.
Redux. Yeah,
exactly.
because Rob didn't get a piece the first time.
They didn't get in on the OG action, so I had to jump in here. You had Stephanie out in the hill country of Texas, but I was born in West Texas, where the oil comes from. And I grew up in Houston, which is the energy capital of the world. Of course, people where I live now in Seattle and probably where David lives in Portland probably hate Houston with every fiber of their body, for all I know. But, that's where every super major oil company, every minor oil company, they're all headquartered in Houston. That kind of happened a long time ago, gosh, that's kind of, it's weird to, oil and gas doesn't get a lot of love these days, but it's also kind of it was what made America great at one time, actually. It was the fuel of this country. It's when you think of the wars we had to fight, when you think about the nostalgia of Route 66, when you think about the love of driving a car and the gas stations as you're driving across America, that was kind of a cool thing at one point, right?
Yeah.
Before
horses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Horses before horses.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe the Four. I don't know. Maybe you're going to say at a Wigwam TP motel somewhere in Arizona when you're driving Route 66 in your convertible with fins, right?
Yeah.
Seemed pretty cool, didn't it? I think, actually the coolest poster I have is a picture of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think it was back in the 60s on Route 66. And it was just like a million gas station signs and stuff like that. So struck oil first in Texas a million years ago. A Spindletop was kind of where that first eruption had. And that led to Texas being all about oil. And a lot of people moved there, as you can imagine, right? It's like a gold rush, kind of like IoT, right? This gold rush, we're still searching for it, but it's happening, right?
Yep.
And that was legit. And you had Standard Oil and you had all those things, and they all were the biggest monopolies and the wealthiest people in the world. And of course, they all got broke up, and kind of like all the baby bells, right? Got broke up and turned into a lot of companies that we all know today, right? By different names. But today, you have Exxon and Mobil. Exxon was Humble Oil. Esso, they still call it Esso in Canada. You watch hockey games. Texaco, Chevron was in California. Chevron's relocated to Houston. I remember my uncle was the president of an oil company called Caltex, which was the joint venture between Texaco and Chevron for all the rest of the globe outside the US. And so you'd be all over the world and see Caltex stations.
Yeah.
But IoT plays a big role, and especially edge computing, in the oil business. The oil business is kind of divided into three pieces. There's upstream, where they're doing exploration, where they're having the pads, the drilling rigs, whether it's out in West Texas or in Louisiana or Oklahoma, or could be fracking up in North Dakota, or it could be deep sea out in the Gulf of Mexico or the North Sea or places like that. Obviously in Saudi and lots of places throughout the Middle East, oil's just shooting out of the ground. You have midstream, you have storage, just kind of like we have to store and forward data going for things. You got to store oil, and remember there's crude oil. And then when you have downstream, you have refining, because you can't put the crude oil into your car. Yeah. It doesn't work. And so we refine it into a couple of things. We either refine it not as much into something called diesel, or you can make something called gasoline. Your engine lasts longer with diesel, but it doesn't have as much juice. Gasoline's got more firepower. But and obviously you have difference in costs, and so you have costs all around, whether it's the cost of exploration, the cost of drilling, transportation, that you see pipelines all over the place. Yeah. You hear talk about pipelines, again, storage, and then that refinery. And so when you think about IoT, if you break it up into pieces, you can see all the existing usages and you can see the opportunities. If you're out in the middle of nowhere in West Texas with a drilling rig, you may have horrible coverage like I do today, but probably a million times worse, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so they don't have cellular coverage oftentimes. They don't have any kind of anything. And so, but the data is valuable about the drilling at the wellhead and what's going on there. It's gotten really high tech over the years, driven a lot by companies like Schlumberger and Halliburton, really making, in fact, I'd say it would blow Silicon Valley people away how much more high tech some of the stuff they're doing is than what they do in California. It's pretty crazy because they're motivated.
Yeah, it's not just about data and information either. It's all the physical stuff that we talk about, right?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
about equipment, and then on the upstream side, like you mentioned, for the exploration, it's a big data business.
Seismic.
But the thing that you're dealing with is physical. It's the earth. It's the stuff that's underground and trying to discover it. And these places are very remote and they're vast, right? So how do you get connectivity out there? How do you get the sensors down under the ground to sense where oil is so that you don't invest a shit ton of money in drilling in areas where there's nothing but bedrock, you're right. It is an insane industry that, I didn't appreciate it until I started consulting for one of the majors, and we were doing innovation projects for them. It's not the back office ERP which I did, but in a past life, but working with the front end of these organizations and these companies is just astonishing, the appetite that they have for all kinds of technology, right?
Absolutely.
Advanced technology.
Absolutely.
Military grade stuff.
Yeah. The drill bit and the whole thing going down, that's all instrumented. Yeah. It's getting telemetry from what's happening as it's going down. And of course, one of the innovations that happened years ago was kind of this thing called horizontal drilling, where really smart people figured out we don't just have to go down, we can turn and go find pockets of oil, and which is really incredible. And so you have a fully instrumented drill going in there with a bit and everything and telemetry coming back there. And it's doing local compute, right around that drilling site, wherever that happens to be. Or you're out at the drilling rig out in the Gulf of Mexico. There's so much data being harvested. But, as we talk about, we know a lot of the data is just completely unused. You always hear about the companies that did really well, like OSI Soft and everything with historians. So much of that business was all from oil and gas. But what we found over time was, much of that data was being captured, but just stored and never analyzed, which is, kind of a bummer. And so what's the stats? 95% of the data captured and never looked at, never analyzed, which is interesting. So you got the upstream thing. We're searching. This is kind of like, remember, we were kind of, a lot of people, you wrote some stuff, Leonard, recently about digital twins. There's the part of the digital twin. I'm doing simulation. I'm going to create something. Maybe I'm finding something. Then there's the operational digital twin. I'm at runtime. Things are happening and I'm hydrating my twin with telemetry data. And so there's that runtime, which is most of the time, right? With oil production, what's going on? But I got this dang expensive satellite communication, which is really killing me and eating into my margins big time. Which is kind of drove a lot of this edge computing out at the pad site, push that intelligence to edge nodes, do that analytics there, figure out answers to questions, problems, things like that right there locally. You can't shoot it back over expensive satellites to do it back at the ranch, right, all the time or in the cloud. So midstream, things like storage and stuff like that. I'll give you an eye-opener, silly story. And this happened to me more than once. So back when I was working in Microsoft and we were building Azure IoT and incubating that. And so we have this giant building on Microsoft's campus, like a lot of companies have a big executive briefing center. Mm-hmm. And so every week, plane loads of executives from every company on the planet fly into Seattle and they go out to Redmond, Washington for their 2 days of executive briefings from all the PMs from all the major products, because every company in the world uses Microsoft for basically everything to run their business. And so they're always there. So I was a person doing the majority of the IoT briefings. And so I would sit there and I would eschew PowerPoint, and I usually just whiteboarded the whole thing. And I would whiteboard how you'd build these systems, how they worked, how Azure IoT would work. But I'd hear their stories, and it was really interactive. And so some oil and gas guys, more than once, they talked about the notion of getting in a pickup truck, driving out to a tank farm, and literally putting a big giant stick in the oil tanks, those big giant tanks you see when you're driving.
That's how you measure.
Yeah, and that's how they measured how much oil was in the tank. And I was like, what? I go, I just checked my watch. Yes, it's the 21st century. Have you guys, here's the thing. This was kind of a wake-up call for me. When you, as someone who's kind of in this journey like we are with IoT, and you're sometimes thinking that everybody's got it figured out, and you're thinking that all these big mega companies, the wealthiest companies in the world, are all the super majors, right? Yeah. And surely they've got it figured out. So why is somebody driving a pickup truck to put a stick in an oil tank when we have the magic of wireless? And a little sensor would tell you how much oil is in the tank, right? Just like a sensor is telling you how much gasoline is still in your car, right? I've heard that multiple times. That also was kind of my wake-up call to going, hey, maybe there's opportunity in this thing after all. People are pretty stupid, aren't they? They're putting sticks in a tank. It's like the 1930s. It's like we're on the set of filming Giant with Rock Hudson out in West Texas. And what's this oil stuff, man? And so that was interesting. And so there's still a lot of primitive stuff. So measuring what's going on in those tanks, you have pipelines, right? Oil and natural gas, obviously, flow. Yeah. Monitoring flow problems like that as things are going through pipelines. Obviously, we ship things through pipelines. We ship oil and gas on trucks, in trains. You see them going by you all the time. You have controversy over people saying, I don't want oil trains or oil trucks going through my town. You hear stuff like that because I don't want an explosion or something. And of course, we have super tankers that are going through the Suez Canal sometimes.
All the time. Not some of the time, all the time.
All the time. And supply chain is a big part of the margin, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there's the cost of getting oil out of the ground. There is the benchmark, like West Texas Intermediate pricing. And then there's the diff. And the diff is how you make your money, right? And so what's eating into that money? Transportation, storage, refining, getting it to the customer. And you have refineries all over the place. And then sometimes, and so downstream, that whole refining deal, this is another golden opportunity for IoT. Unlike a lot of times when we talk about industrial IoT with manufacturing, which is typically discrete, in this case, it's something called process manufacturing. And so it's things flowing through a pipe and magic happening. If you were ever a kid in high school and in some science class, you were told to build some kind of Rube Goldberg experiment to show some crazy way to make something happen. Well, that's what a oil refinery is. It's a different kind of.
I got to find a filter for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. But no, keep going.
Yeah, but that's a classic situation. You know how you always hear me talking about. Don't worry about competing with high speed, real time, blah, blah, blah stuff. We're competing with some person with a clipboard, wearing a hard hat, walking around a refinery, looking at gauges and seeing what's the health of the refinery, all the different components, the flow, is everything up to spec? And they're taking logs. This is what we've done since the dawn of time, right? Is we take logs on a clipboard and we enter that information in. So as you can imagine, infinite opportunities for IoT in either sensors telling you that information and using the magic of wireless to transport stuff that's remote that you're visiting to back to a server or something like that, where you're capturing that data and analyzing it that way. This is real simple stuff. A lot of people get overwhelmed by IoT. It's really simple.
Yeah, and you know what? That's exactly. So we have this whole thread going on digital twins. That's why I kind of went ballistic, or I got triggered when I heard Jensen call everything a digital twin in his whole metaverse spiel that he did for GTC 2021. It's like, no, we have a hard enough time in IoT with the concept of digital twin. Don't go and make it everything. It's not everything. It's actually a purposeful concept. You know, it has purpose, and we're trying to solve a problem, and it's not that problem you're talking. You already have your term for this other shit you're doing over here.
Yeah.
Video games and simulations and modeling for PLM. Even though, you know, there's an intersection, and I you know, like I said, I think it's down at the data definition level or the schema level, but that's fine. But a digital twin has its purpose. Keep it simple. Don't overload it with other shit, because we're already struggling. I mean, most companies haven't even implemented digital twins for the most part,
Right.
much less created applications that create value off of digital twins, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to bring PLM and modeling and simulation for things that don't even exist in real life yet, and you're going to distract everyone. And, you know, so I totally... Yeah, keep it simple, because there's simple problems to be solved out in the field, and you don't need to have this metaphysical debate about things. You know, it's just friggin' connect this with that.
I think, you know, I think that, you know, oil and gas, this whole sector, they've kept it simple in terms of IoT for two reasons. I think one, we've always gone back and forth in, you know, what's the ROI?
Yeah.
And because these things, you know, whether you're looking at upstream, midstream, or downstream, anytime you can bring an efficiency or automate a process, like, it pays really, really, really quickly. You know, in Rob's example of, you know, a resource or resources in a pickup truck driving, and then, you know, getting the measuring stick, you know, traditionally we go, oh, you know, you want to save on the wear and tear of the vehicle and the truck roll and two resources at X amount. And, you know, that's you were doing the ROI calculation. But the folks that have been doing this for a long time, their whole thing was about safety, because how many folks slipped out of the ladder on the side of, you know, oil and gas, definitely early adopters, because they see value really, really quickly. They just don't market this stuff like everyone else. So, like, you know, on the surface, you know, some might think that oil and gas is one of the lowest adopters. They're not. They're just not doing, you know, 17 press releases a day every time they connect a valve out in a basin somewhere.
No,
Right.
I'm serious. Their CTOs and CIOs are just laughing at Valley, just going,
Valley, look what we discovered how to do. This is amazing. And they're like, are you kidding me?
Exactly. You
Get
want to
back
talk
to work.
about hard shit.
Put on your hard hat and get back to work, man.
Yeah, exactly.
And David's right about safety. Safety is such a huge thing in that space. And so IoT is early warning, right? And IoT helps give us safety. If you are not even trying to build efficiency in your process and you're just trying to have safety for your employees, there's no better way to do it than all these IoT sensors. And so, to your point, you know, all those dangerous locations that workers put themselves into, you know, I'm going up on top of a drilling rig to do an inspection, and I could fall a long way. Hopefully no one falls into an oil tank. That would be bad. There's, you know, we all know about explosions happening at chemical plants, at refineries. All that is preventable through early detection. Usually it's some kind of gas leaking, right? A noxious gas that hits some kind of spark, an ignition source that causes a mega explosion. And so if we did a better job of sensing all these flammable or noxious gases that can hurt people, you know, or even the kind that don't explode, the kind that just make you sick, or the kind that might give you cancer, you know. Another interesting thing I heard one time, I was speaking at an oil and gas conference, and I probably said this on one of our shows before. One of the guys told me that they said the most dangerous thing in the whole oil business, it's not what you think. It's actually every time they put an employee in a truck to go somewhere, they say that's the far and away, statistically speaking, putting someone in an automobile to do anything, the stats go off the charts on injury and fatalities. And so as dangerous as being in a refinery or a chemical plant or on top of a rig is, putting someone in a car or a pickup truck dwarfs the risk, it's insane. It really is. Isn't that crazy to think about that? Just putting someone in a vehicle is the riskiest thing you can do.
I wouldn't be surprised. And it's really part of the culture of an oil and gas company. When I was in London, I was doing a gig for BT, and they literally had rules for how you go up and down stairs. And we're like, we're at their headquarters. It's not like we're on a freaking rig. But you have to follow these protocols because it's part of because these people at some point in their career at BT, they will be going on an oil rig, or they'll be out in the field, or they'll be in a hazardous environment. And so safety is
do that, but like that. This brings a smile to my face, because that's a culture thing. If you're telling me that you were in a corporate building somewhere in central London, and someone asked you the right way to use a staircase, that's culture. That's someone who understands safety is critical and might have seen a few incidents that could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Also, don't show up with nice leather shoes on site, please. Okay.
Right.
Don't be that. Act the part, Leonard. Act the part.
Make sure you have steel in the toe of your shoes, because heavy things may fall on your shoe, and it's not good.
No,
it's a dangerous environment.
Now, Rob, early on in this episode, you mentioned that there were, referring to satellite comms, which are cheaper now, but still expensive as hell, because it's either this or nothing, right?
Or nothing, yeah.
But they oil and gas and all of these IoT use cases in extreme environments, in faraway environments. You said it. They figured out, how do we minimize data transport by doing as much as we can on the edge and only sending out what's needed, right? So I'm curious, since you work at at this Swedish company now, what are how are folks looking at using available spectrum, licensed, unlicensed, and standing up their own little telephone company for their valves and their jacks and their pumps and their pads? Like, do we? I don't know. Do we want to plug us and talk? Because it's solving a problem that's connectivity.
Yeah, you're right. It's got to be there somehow. And you know what? Economics always trumps everything else every time. So I'll give you one example. Obviously, we all know a few of them. But I'll give you one interesting one. It has to do with narrowband IoT. It might be LTE-M as well. So
some call it 5G. Depends which telco you talk to.
Well, all that stuff is part of 4G.
Yeah.
All that stuff is part of 4G, but it was carried forward, as we do the releases. Mm-hmm. And so it gets to live inside the 5G space, and it's getting improved too. Because NB-IoT, while we talk a good game about the 10-year battery life, there's no 10-year battery life with NB-IoT. It's dwarfed by LoRaWAN as far as how much more efficient LoRa is. But there's new releases of the 3GPP spec that actually is taking care of that. That was a first stab. Obviously, Sigfox and LoRa beat us to the punch on that one. And so it was playing catch up, right? So speaking of that kind of technology, because you're right, we know, you as part of a giant mobile operator, it's all about money. And so it's like you're only going to build tower and have backhaul where there's a big enough population of people to justify the expense, right? It's a huge capital expense, right? And so in the rural areas or out in oil fields, you might be going, oh, I don't know if it's worth building a tower out here and then the backhaul. And so there's staying within the 3GPP specifications, because no matter who's coming up with great ideas, whether it's Ericsson or Huawei or Nokia or Qualcomm, there's all these patents that get filed, but it all has to get folded in, and we all have to agree on a spec, because just like gasoline has to work at every gas station in the world for your car. Cellular technology has to work wherever you roam in the world. And so we all, no matter who's the big innovator, we all have to come together and standardize so that your phone and everything else works around the world. So staying within that spec, though, Ericsson has some technology where we basically can turn the volume up to 11 on NB-IoT on our towers with our radios, where we can, I think we've gotten over, I want to say 120, now 130 kilometer range for NB-IoT off a single cell tower, which is truly incredible. We first did our first testing with that stuff with Telstra in Australia, and then we've done some more. It was originally around 90 to 100 kilometers, and now it's even further. And of course, obviously we know about different frequency wavelengths and stuff like that. Even can help you even more going further, or even underground or things like that. So that's one of the things that we will, But again, it would it stays within spec, but you can imagine whatever the mobile operator is, and not just who they are, but also the location. Mobile operators hedge their bets, and they use technology from all the players. They don't usually go all in with one, put their eggs in a basket, because they know they all have to follow the standards. So they know that they can buy it from different vendors, kit makers, right? Like us. And so a different state may be used, Verizon in one state of the US might be using Nokia gear, in another state they might be using Ericsson. It just depends, right? Same with T-Mo and AT&T. So that's kind of the deal there. But in the event that you happen to be using Ericsson gear, you could avail yourself of that longer range, which then could provide coverage for oil fields, farms, ranches, things like that, where the cell tower may previously been too far away to provide coverage. Other things, we've talked about the CBRS deal, where companies can get licenses, can avail themselves of some spectrum, and then they can do their own private, 4G or 5G technologies. Because trust me, out at the pad site, or wherever out there, they're already creating their own private network already. And they're going to be stringing cables around, doing Ethernet, and they're doing Wi-Fi, and they've been doing that for a long time. Why? Well, it's because everybody understands it. It's because you have Wi-Fi at your house. You know how it works, right? And so, of course, you need it doesn't mean you're connected back to headquarters in Houston, but at least you created a network where you are. Yeah. And so, of course, they're doing that, and they do it. And man, the stuff that's on drilling rigs out in the Gulf of Mexico, those are the most advanced, complicated things you've ever seen in your life.
And you know what? Here's another interesting point that you may or may not know that you're bringing up, but it's intrinsically air gapped because it's so remote. It's not like you're going to get hacked. You're not connected to anything.
It's local, and it's private. And I think the advent, as Rob was saying, how telcos, you might use kit from one, kit from another one. I went to the whole Alcatel B side, Nortel A side, and all that makes. But in context of a single site in the middle of nowhere, and they're leveraging Wi-Fi, because hey, guess what? There's no interference if your next neighbor is 300 miles away, right? You're okay. And with the many advances of kit makers now effectively letting an enterprise deploy, let's call it carrier grade cellular technology, and making it seem as if it was Wi-Fi from a management perspective, right? Because IT folks are not necessarily telco folks, and if telco folks make that assumption, we are in trouble. But effectively, private cellular, make it manage like you would manage your Wi-Fi, and now these sites can take advantage of of better, more density per radio. So if you think of how many access points do I need to connect what versus, no, I've got this one radio and I can connect, 10,000 things in a, square kilometer kind of thing. So it's really fun to see what's happening. But you know what? It's the same oil and gas companies that, have been at the forefront of this for 20 years with satellite and then did the edge thing. And I did the physical wires and did Wi-Fi. And they're like, oh no, we can do this because it makes sense.
Yeah.
And one of the, from an IoT, from a sensor and connectivity perspective, we always talk about ecosystem. Like, hey, you want to talk about 6G? That's phenomenal. But do you have any 6G devices? No. Okay, they go away, right?
Yeah.
But when you take the standards conversation that Rob mentioned, if you deploy private 3GPP based LTE somewhere, guess what? How many 4G devices that are that are certified are in the world? Tens of thousands. So now you can say, I've got a new drill site going up here, and I'm just going to look for the best sensors that have been used, the last decade, and I'm going to light them up because I don't have a connectivity issue. I don't have a management issue because my IT guys, they get it. This is easy, and it's private, like actually private. And we're definitely seeing adoption with oil and gas of all these things. So it's it's like old is new again.
Yeah.
You're right.
And you know what? The creepy thing is they probably, the oil and gas folks, I pretty much know that this as a fact. When they come up and say, hey, look, there's this new thing called 5G, I'm sure that the CTO of an oil and gas company knows more about 5G than the telco guy coming up and trying to pitch him on the promise of 5G.
It's going to be magic.
No, that's not an exaggeration, because when I was at IBM, they were pushing IBM to the limit of the technologies that IBM was developing in IBM research, quantum, stuff like quantum and at the time advanced next gen HPC, graphene, all these still in development, technologies that they're already doing heavy research into, and they have it on their horizon plot for their roadmap. What are those technologies we can adopt? What are those applications? I mean, that's the work we were doing with these majors, and it was insane.
Leonard, but you're right. And, this is knowing your customer, because, if I'm a 5G slinger, and I'm going to have a meeting with an executive of a major oil company, and I know that this person has been doing this for 30 years and can probably tell me a soil sample blindfolded just by right. And if I respect myself and I respect the client, it's really about the things so just to pick on 5G, how is it going to enhance? So again, I just use private LTE as an example, and to be able to say, listen, so today on this deployment, you can have 10,000 sensors on your pad on a radio. With 5G, it's going to be 1 million. And what I think that does for you is that now you can even over sensorize things, and your cost is not going to go up because you have more density.
Yeah.
And I shut my mouth. That is it. I told this guy, this thing is going to let you bring more data from places where it was really, really difficult before. Shut up.
Yeah.
And that's it. And be
honest.
honest.
Put the together. They'll go more data, more things, same gear.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Now, the second I get into, because, this can help the temperature of the furnace. So when you're separating lubricants that's when people get in trouble, because the guy that you're talking to, or gal, in many instances, might be, like a process engineer with 2 PhDs on this stuff. And you're going to go in there to talk about how chemicals and isotopes work.
Absolutely.
I would recommend against that. Stick with what you know.
Yes, stick with what you know. Just take them right there. You don't want to bury the lead, kill the sale because you kept talking. It just, stop. They're the expert at their thing. You're going to help them. You are an accelerant to what they're trying to accomplish, right?
I see what you did there. Accelerant. I got that.
You like that, huh? Yeah, for sure. Smart people, so many PhDs work in chemical, oil, gas, some of the smartest kids you went to college with, chemical engineers, all the geologists that maybe you met. What do you think they're doing? They're not all looking for dinosaurs.
I don't think any of them are looking for dinosaurs.
Yeah, and they're not looking for the lost ark either.
Paleontologists.
Where's the dinero? Where's the dinero? T-Rex bones or oil?
Actually, Rob, you're right. If you want to find oil, follow the dinosaurs.
Follow the dinosaurs.
You're right. I mean, Sinclair.
So when we think about right now with IoT, we want to be a helper to the industry. We should assume that they already censored the heck out of most everything anyway. They probably already have you never know. So you don't want to, you're right, sounds stupid. You're going to take them and say, here are some things maybe you hadn't thought about. Again, margin is a big thing for them. We all know the boom and bust. I certainly lived the boom and bust life growing up in Houston. When it's $100 a barrel, people are popping champagne every day and buying Rolls Royces. When it drops down to 16, people are like, we're dying, No, I totally remember there was, I remember, late 70s, early 80s, Houston was the richest city in the world. And they were building skyscrapers like there's no tomorrow. And then about 1985, the bottom fell out of the whole market. And you never seen a town where everybody put their house for sale all at the same time and nobody was buying. And it was just mass exodus to new boom towns out west. It's a boom and bust deal based on the price of oil. It's supply and demand. It's playing a game with the OPEC cartel. With what they're doing, that plays a major role. You can predict the future if you follow what the cartel's doing. Are they going to decide to pump more? Are they going to decide to hold back? Because that also, current events play a role. If you hear about instability in the Middle East or something like that, you should expect the price of oil to shoot up there just based on not reality always, but emotion or feelings, which is kind of like the stock market too sometimes, right?
It is.
It's not always based on fundamentals. And so that's a game.
Shibu the dog is not based on fundamentals? Is that what you're saying, Dogecoin? No?
Dogecoin, maybe?
12 cents! 12 cents!
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No, there's some good stuff here for sure. And so think about, all you want to do is you want to help them increase their margins, help them be more efficient. And the safety thing is a huge deal for them. Yeah. Oil business, because of, things are changing, attitudes are changing in the United States about things. And so there's a possibility at some point in the future that huge oil subsidies may be pulled away from that industry, potentially. You never know. And if that happens, those companies are going to be looking for even more efficiencies to get better margins. And so they will be looking to connectivity, to IoT solutions that are going to actually take actions and make a difference, not just nice to have stuff. So that's something to be thinking about. There's the fluctuations, there's mega trends. There's obviously mega trends towards people just using electric cars and stuff like that. And so all those are all playing a role. And so also, when you think about using IoT in oil and gas, don't think about it like if you feel bad about that or like you're helping some people that are trying to kill the planet or something. Think about what you're going to do to help them be more efficient, be less wasteful. Think about how you're going to be measuring noxious gases, methane coming from natural gas pipelines and be able to shut that stuff down. If you can help them do that, you're helping the environment in a big way. And so it's still a good thing to do for sure, no matter where you stand on all this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's all great stuff. So my key takeaway from this is the following. Don't induce, accelerate, right? That's basically it.
Yeah.
Don't make people throw up.
Yeah.
Accelerate their innovation.
Safe advice.
Path to value, right?
Yeah.
You always come up with something. You just have to wait until the end of the episode. That's the thing.
There you go. That's where we pull it all together. Just say no to explosions.
Yeah. Just say no to explosions. I think that's a pretty easy one.
Just say no to toxic stuff going into water. You know.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
This is good, guys.
Yeah, it was a really good Redux episode, I think. So
yeah, good stuff.
Great idea. So I think that is a wrap for this week, right? So
it's a wrap.
Done.
I think let's have that guest. Let's have a guest next week.
Sounds good.
We have time to prep. So anyways, so thanks for joining, making it to the end here with us. And remember to subscribe, www.iotcoffeetalk.com. And we will see you next week. Like, subscribe. What else is there that you can do?
Hit the bell. Hit the bell.
Importantly, comment. We want to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
And then maybe one of these days, if one of you guys say something really, really interesting, we'll have you on the show and you can drill down, right? Yeah.
Sounds good.
Fair warning.
Yeah, we're not nice.
No.
Fair warning. That sounds like a Van Halen album.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
I don't think there's, Wolfie's going to have to do it.
Wolfie's going to do it.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. All right, man. All right, guys.
Adios.
Cheers.
Next week.